After a second chance in front of the board, District 150 will not waive tuition for students whose parents work in PPS but live somewhere else. Good Monday evening. I'm Tyler Lopez.
And I'm Janice Reppolds. Thanks for joining us. In tonight's top story, Madison Porter shares what broke the first deadlocked vote. Madison.
Tyler and Janice, in January, the board voted 3-3 on the same motion. However, one member was absent. Tonight, all board members were there to cast a vote, and the outcome was different.
We have 3 ayes, 4 nays. Motion fails.
Since 2021, Peoria Public Schools has allowed non-resident students whose parents work for the district get their education here at 45% off. According to the district, that policy has proved to be beneficial in teacher retention. Now, state lawmakers have allowed up to 100% off, leaving it up to each individual district. But a majority of the board members can't see how the rest of District 150 would benefit from increasing that discount.
Our district was in deficit spending some years ago, and we've managed to overcome that. And it's from prudent discipline, making dollars and cents make sense.
President Paris McConnell also argued that District 150 offers competitive salaries and parents should be willing to invest in their child's education. 3 other members agreed with her. Vice President Gregory Wilson, Chanel Hargrave Murray, and Christina Rose voted the opposite way. Rose argued other school districts in central Illinois have a similar policy, so why not give it a shot?
That it could really help with our teacher retention, especially since our calendar is different than the surrounding areas. It can make it difficult as a parent and a teacher to be on separate schedules. So I think it is worth at least exploring.
Superintendent Dr. Sharon Karat says only 5 students take advantage of the parent-employee discount right now. But there are other students who reside outside of the district who are required to pay full tuition, which is about $10,000.
So it's not fair to them to have,
some people not paying and some people paying.
Right.
And based on tonight's vote, this could be the end of that discount. The policy District 150 has now, which offers 45% off, expires at the end of this school year.